Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mitchell J. Rabin, enjoying the beautiful Mozart as we open up today's show. And Gary made me laugh as I sat nearby. What did he tell me to do? Rub my belly and my head at the same time? With the same hand or other ones, Gary? Well, I'll figure that one out and get it back to him. Anyway, he's a good man, and he makes me laugh and cry, so that's the way it is. When we look at what's going on in the world, there is much reason to shed a tear, and when we come back to ourselves and our own inner lives, we are blessed with incredible riches. So there's always room for both crying and laughing in this life, God knows. Today, we will be exploring some very delicate and sensitive matters, such as the real basis of why we're here. We're not going to mess around today, folks. We're going to go right for the jugular, so to speak. And we're not going to futz around with other considerations. We move in circles these days so far from the calling and nature of our souls that it is very much time, I feel, as we look around our world, to reflect deeply on why does this world look the way it does? Why is the world as it is? And what can we, as responsible stewards, do about it? So that will be the theme of today's show. And let me say that for those of you who are joining us, it's relevant to everybody, and it's relevant to the subjects of health, well-being, life, and death. Because if we're not connected to why we're here, our health will truly always be valuable, but it won't have the same purpose and meaning as when we get clear about why we're here in a body, living our lives. Then health becomes extremely important, and the energy of the mind begins to feed that importance. We actually can generate health through our participation in life. It was Werner Erhard who, many years ago, the founder, for those of you who may not know of EST, later the Forum, which has since been taken over by the Landmark Foundation, said that health is a participation in life. It is a function of our participation in life. Those who do not participate, their health begins to diminish. Those who participate fully in a very alive way, they have health that prospers. And that's, of course, what we want. And we want to support that with good nutrition. And we want to support that with good lifestyle habits, including exercise, including a really rigorous de-stressing regimen, including having good relations with others, including good sleep habits where we can really go down deep into delta and absorb the regenerative energies that become available essentially from the innermost core of our body, which is connected to the innermost core of the universe itself. They're not separate. When we can digest, no pun intended, these sorts of ideas, when we can see that it is seamless between the health of the body and the health of the mind, and truly the health of the emotions and the health of the soul, we become that much brighter. And why is it this way? Well, it's always been this way. It's that we have constructed artificial linguistic delineations, distinctions, conveniences for understanding and relating to one function of life or one part or aspect of life, separate from another. What that means is, if we're dealing on the level of, say, body, we want to be able to talk about the body. But the body is not separate from anything else. But for the moment, as I said, a linguistic convenience, if you will, a contrivance, artificially, not inseminated, but artificially derived for the sake of conversation, we can talk about the body. And that's all well and good. That is just fine. But not if we misunderstand its interconnectedness always and everywhere with everything else. It's like having a microscope. And just because we may be looking at one red corpuscle doesn't mean that there's not a white one just beyond and other red ones and possibly an aggregation here and one there outside of the specificity of what's under the lens at that moment. It's all completely connected to everything else. Everything is a stream. Everything is a flow of which we are parts. And so if we want to think for a moment that the very purpose of our lives is separate from our health and our well-being, we've got another thing coming. It is integral to it. Health is actually generated from the health and well-being of and nutrition of our soul. Well, what is soul nutrition, you may ask? Well, how about reflection? How about contemplation? How about rigorous self-examination? As Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. We can get so much from this idea that the examined life, the life where we take stock of the fact that we've been given this beautiful life, we've been given a human birth, as the Buddhists would call it, a precious human birth. From the Tibetan Buddhist point of view, each of us has been each other's mothers 10,000 times. Each of us. So it is with that attitude of love and respect for one's mother that we should be treating one another. Interesting. And that we are given through a human birth, distinct from other kinds of births, leisure time. What is that leisure time for? That beautiful gift. It's for self-examination. It's for becoming the Buddha that we really are. Well, what does the Buddha mean? It means the awakened one. It's not someone's name. Or, it's all of our names. It's the being who is awake, who is, in a sense, omnipresent, in some way omniscient, aware of all things. He may be looking straight ahead and seeing what's before him, but at the same time, he is aware of his own center, or her own center, grounded in the basis of his or her own being. And since this is a show about creating a better world, we are obliged to examine, my friends, all those aspects of our lives that relate to and deal with creating a better world. Well, we know that a fundamental part of it is that we have enough health to manifest in this world, both mentally, intellectually, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, in such a way that we can really contribute. We can take our divine gift of life itself and give something back, because we know that life is a give and a take. We know it's a giving and it's a receiving. And that's what makes us feel most alive. We find that we feel most alive, if you really look, with giving. Receiving is always nice, too. It's the perfect counterpart in our world. And when there is a level of trust between people, always difficult, it seems, these days to establish, but once established, is precious. We we can take ourselves, we can take our lives and move them to another level of operation. People become partners. They become teams. They form community, and they make things happen. If you want to think about a lobbying group, what is a lobbying group but a team of people on some level, a community? Now, they're tied together by a certain idea and by money. Some principle or value and money makes the whole thing work. That's the engine, so to speak. So, too, in our lives, in our personal lives, in our business lives, we can form alliances. We can form partnerships also that help everybody. It's a collaboration. And when that happens, you may notice that your spiritual nature, your spiritual well-being will rise up to meet the occasion. Because, in fact, we are all one, our soul is, in a sense, getting a chance to connect to the higher level of itself, of life itself, and commune, if you will, with others on that level through the experience of pleasure, through the experience of joy, through the experience of shared serenity. So if we want to talk about creating a better world, we need to talk about life and life purpose. If we talk about life purpose, we know that we need to have at its base some semblance of health, balance, centeredness, and well-being. Otherwise, we're just not going to be effective in our life's endeavors. So we always come across this notion of balance. And we look at the balance, let's say, between East and West. In the East, predominantly, there has been a large emphasis on our spiritual lives. And the Indians, the Tibetans, the Chinese have taken all of this very, very serious over the course of many centuries. Actually, more than that, you can trace China's spiritual heritage and medical heritage back to some 10,000 years ago. I'm not sure about the Tibetans, but it's certainly old with the Bunpo shamanic teachings. And India, of course, you're going back approximately 10,000 years to the Vedas and the Purushas. And and then you can dip into the area of Persia and go back even a little bit further into the fire rituals and ceremonies, all representing life. But for us to reflect on ourselves today, that's the subject here. And I'll tell you, I would like to invite any of you who may want to weigh in on this to certainly feel free to give us a call at our studio number, which is 888-888-873-4643. 888-873-4643. At any time, actually, feel free if you want to make a comment or ask a question and participate in this dialogue, which will otherwise be a monologue, and which is fine with me. I just want to open that door. The main door I want to open is the door of everyone's hearts and minds together. Because if you do not get a chance to actually sit down in your life and contemplate your navel, contemplate your life itself, this is a time and a chance to do that. To really contemplate, why am I here? Why do I have the emotions that I have? Why do I attract the experiences that I have? What is this about? You can take this time during which we talk about matters relating to the creation of a better world for all beings, and give yourself the benefit, give yourself the moments that this show lasts in order to really self-inquire. We're so busy on the horizontal level with our lives. Why do our lives look the way they do? How am I going to be generating more money, more prestige, that girlfriend, that house? Yet, when you look at your life from a vertical view, wow, imagine that you could shoot yourself up to the moon. This is a game I used to play with friends and students many, many years ago, including myself. Shoot myself up to the moon and look down at our beautiful blue water planet. And what do we see? Ah, there I am. Look there. It's Mitchell Rabin. Ooh, he doesn't look very big from here. Well, what is he doing? Well, that's me. So I can take a part of myself and project it upward through imagination and look down at my life and from a more lofty point of view, ask the question, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your precious human birth? Are you honoring it? Are you giving forth to the world something precious that in fact you were given? Life itself. Born into love or from love. Am I giving that back? Mitchell, are you giving that? Or are you holding back? And for what reason would you be holding back? Do you think that's part of the divine plan too? To hold back? To preserve for oneself only? I don't think so. So when one asks, why am I alive? What is my role? What am I to do here? If one accepts some notion of God or source of all things, whatever it may be, the words do not matter. Why was this being granted this level of intelligence, this kind of perception? And when we reflect on this, we start to quiet down. The monkey mind finds a point of rest. Our mind becomes coherent. We become internally quiet. Life is good. The sense of inner serenity is uppermost. This doesn't happen that often in life unless we're asleep, most unfortunately. But it is in this state, which is considered very much by artists, by musicians, by thinkers, philosophers, and scientists, to be the most fertile state. We've actually generated what an EEG machine would measure as an alpha state, maybe even upper theta. And that state is just pregnant with potential, pregnant with possibility. And it is there that we get to experience our deeper selves consciously. Whereas we experience our deeper selves in the sleep state. But, my word, that's not so good. Because, why? We're not conscious. We're missing out on the fun. If life is really about consciousness, about being conscious, then we want to definitely be sure to be around for the states that arise. So, here we are, quietly looking inside, simply feeling ourselves, allowing a sense of serenity to occur. Stress has seeped out and is gone. We are experiencing the quietude and communion of our soul. Here we can ask the important questions. Here, no longer perturbed, distracted, diverted by the outside world, we can enter a space of reprieve, of respite, of oasis. And from this place, really look at who am I? What am I? Why am I? You may not return with a linear verbal response. Although the brain seeks immediately to solve any problem, resolve any conflict. So some words may flow back from either the more reactive mind or from the deeper, quieter mind. Or you may see an image flow up to the surface. All of this is good. All of this is directional. All of this gives some sense of purpose. I would like to submit that this wafting up is coming from our archetypal nature. We all know that we come in as a certain type. We have a certain human psychobiological type. And there are many different ways of learning about this, many different schools of typology, if you will. Astrology is one. Tarot offers another. The work of Carl Gustav Jung offers yet another. There is, of course, the original ectomorph, endomorph, and mesomorph by Abrams et al. There is the human design system that my good friend Peter Roth has been speaking about for the last couple of years. And Beverly Bright, also from the West Coast. She is, I think, now in Hawaii, who I had my first encounter of human design with. And these are all systems through which we can get in touch with soul's purpose. And that unique expression that is being called upon from us, because while we are all the same, most fundamentally, we are one, God has spoken in very individual ways through us all, breathed life into us in a particular way for a unique expression of its nature to come forth, to manifest. So with that said, when we're residing in this deeper, quieter state, a few really, really good things are happening. One is that our blood is flowing really well. Our breathing has softened and eased. Our mind is quieted and the two hemispheres are made coherent. Our general sense of life is deepened and made more astute. It is here where creativity can flow, whether it's in writing or music or thinking or inventing, any kind of creation, any creative act, walking with consciousness becomes available. So with this sort of self-inquiry, we can begin to also get in touch with the higher dimensions of this life. We begin to separate out from identification purely as body or feeling or mind, and we take a step back inside ourselves. Really interesting thing. For so many years, my friends, I have been speaking of the great gift that we've been given from the divine is our imagination. It allows us to play these games where we can kind of step up, step out, step into another person's shoes, experience the world from another view. Precious this is, because it allows us to be elastic, malleable, mutable, utterly changeable, and shiftable, and flowable like water. Because if you look at us bodily, our greatest physical attribute is actually water. Isn't that funny? Well, it really gives us a lot to reflect on and to understand the symbolic nature of our lives. And the Tao of all things is best represented symbolized by the flowing of water. Let me give the number out again in case anyone is interested in posing a question or a comment. That's 888-873-4643. 888-873-4643. What we're speaking about today, what the subject is of delicate and valuable importance. I dare say that if people were to introduce this more into their lives, self-reflection, even more than meditation. When people meditate, they're trying to get somewhere oftentimes. That's not what meditation is. Meditation is to simply be, and be quiet, and to allow, and be a space of becoming. That's what meditation is for. It's not a job. You know, it's become a job. People say, I tried to meditate. Well, there's no trying. It's sort of like trying to sit down. You're sitting. There's no trying. It's just another level and layer of being. As with what I've walked us through today, if we could just bring ourselves down deeper, drop into our hearts, drop into our feelings, drop into our body, things begin to happen. We become meditated, as it were. So I am leaving for Points West on Friday in order to give a workshop in Ashland, Oregon. For any of you interested, please visit our website at www.abetterworld.net or give us a call at 212-420-0800 if you happen to be in or around the general Ashland area. Portland, Seattle, people will be coming from a few different places, Mount Shasta. And it was the Oneness University community that invited me out there, Callie and Cindy, and represented by them. And I will be giving, among other things, something called the Oneness Blessing, among other people who have been given the gift to share that with others. Sometimes it's known also as Diksha. And I was given the good grace, the high grace, to be able to transmit this to others. When I was last in India, which was February and March of 2005, and I was at Oneness University, in fact, and spent 21 days in a rather intense, highly reflective process. And what we were seeking to accomplish with this Oneness Blessing and the simple teachings around it is to awaken the frontal cortex, the prefrontal lobes, and excite them in such a way that they help to engender in us the experience of oneness, of compassion, of brotherhood. So when we look around at the world we have before us today, we see a world that is ripped apart with tension, with conflict, with war, with greed, with selfishness, with ignorance, with confusion. And what is the way out? What is the way through these? Last week, I had a lawyer on who is very involved in nuclear disarmament on a national and international level, Alice Slater. She has been in positions of nuclear organizations to help influence governments to change their policies and perspectives on nuclear arms, and even the use of nuclear power, which is considered simply a precursor to nuclear arms. And we discussed the pros and cons, and there are many cons and very few pros, and why do we have these in our world, our so-called civilized world? And we came up with a series of actions that people can take, of writing to your congressman and your senators and to corporations and pleading with them, begging them, demanding of them, urging them to change their policies. Well, this is good, but underneath it is where the whole thing lives. If you consider that our lives are outpicturings of our inner lives. Now, wait a minute. What does this mean? This sounds awfully metaphysical. Yet, I submit that we all have some organic, intuitive realization inside ourselves that just those words are true. Our lives begin with an idea internally, in the abstract, from the void, and slowly and surely manifests, first through idea, then through feeling, then through a fuller materialization, a physicalization of a thought originally. And if that's the case, and we see nuclear arms, where is that coming from? It's coming from a deep-seated fear that we're going to be taken over, that we're not good enough to defend ourselves, to stake our claim in life. It comes from any number of different psychological phenomena. But most people, especially those in positions of great power and wealth, really don't want to think of it that way. They want to deal with all these things on the outside, as it were, as though they were truly real. Well, they are real, but they have been given substance and momentum to become materialized through all that I'm saying, that which is occurring on the psychological, mental, and emotional realms. And if we can see that, we can save ourselves a lot of time, a lot of worry, a lot of service, as we say in Yiddish, a lot of trouble, a lot of money, making things that are essentially armaments reflecting fear. My old Tai Chi teacher, Bob Lunish, may he rest in peace, deep, great soul, my elder spirit brother, used to say, what's a gun? A gun is simply a tool of fear. One who holds a gun is holding his fear in his hand. That's what it's an expression of. Really interesting. So if we could look at the accoutrement of this world, those things that are so real on one hand, and they are. I'm not denying their reality. I don't call it an illusion. No way. But if we could see its origin and why it's there, then we're really cutting to the quick. To pass legislation barring nuclear arms or barring guns or any of this stuff, why, it's fine on a practical level, but it's not getting to the root of why anybody would want to generate these kinds of things in the very first place. That's where we need to get. That's the bedrock of our lives. I have spoken several times on the show and on the TV show about this phenomenon growing quickly all over Europe and Canada, and now through A Better World's efforts in New York and the United States, total biology. And here we are given the ability to experience, you could call a modernized Freudian version of understanding the relationship of psyche to soma, of understanding that what goes on in the body is but a reflection of what is going on in the mind. And what is going on in the mind is a reworking of old emotions. And if we can get to those and listen in and see from where they come and get to the bottom of it, so to speak, we can rework them. We can experience them consciously and thereby free ourselves from the repetition of mind. It goes on and on and on to the point that actually it makes us ill. We can be free of that. The potential is here. But by taking a pill, by even getting a holistic remedy, while more natural, and it is good, is actually not the answer. It's not what set up the pattern in the first place. And it's to that we seek to get. We need to get to the bottom of the pattern. We need to get to the level of cause, of why and how things happen. There is an initial pattern in life that has given rise to life itself. And we want to unfold that pattern. And then things become crystally clear. So I want to simply take a moment right now and open up what is considered randomly a book called Daily Meditations by the Bulgarian mystic Omram Mikhail Ivanov. Later on this summer, I will be going up to their community in Jaffrey, British Columbia, known as the Institute for the Development of Education, Art, and Leisure. They understand the Tibetan Buddhist idea of leisure. It's not leisure the way we have it so much in the West. I think I'll lie on my yacht and sip on my margarita. Oh, yeah, that's a form of leisure. That's very beautiful. But what the Buddhists mean by leisure is, how can I use my precious gift of a human birth to realize its potential, that I may give back to that which gave this as a matter of thanks. It's called dedicating one's life to service, to the good, to spirit, to Buddha nature, to the Tao. However one perceives, understands, in one's bones, what it is to be of and from Source. This doesn't involve being a religious person. It doesn't involve being anything as such. It's a biological understanding that everything came from something. There is a fundamental source from which life itself springs, made manifest through sperm and egg. So, with that said, I will read this from Omram Mikhail Ivanov. Matter sets endless traps for human beings, and it is so successful that not only do people turn away from all spiritual practice, they consider those who feel the need for it ridiculous and even try to pass them off as abnormal. Since they are incapable of perceiving the advantages of a purer, more selfless conception of life, they are unwilling to renounce any of their material satisfactions, and they mock those who do not share these interests. We see this so often. People have a tendency to ridicule or put down what they do not want, what they do not understand, or what is beyond them. They close themselves off in a narrow, dull, and mediocre existence for the material world, however rich it may be, is very limited, and our abilities to make the most of it are even more limited. But day after day, those who strive to live the life of the Spirit discover indescribable treasures and extraordinary sensations. Inspiring. Now, I would like to invoke the spirit right now of a dear friend of mine and colleague, Andrew Harvey, who I interviewed for A Better World TV last week for another time. The first time was on sacred activism, one of his pet and one of my pet themes in our lives, actually. And last week we did a tribute to Rumi, the great Sufi poet and of the 13th century. And he certainly embodies the idea of sacred activism, of putting his heart and soul on the line for something in which he believed, love. Well, this whole idea of sacred activism, or as Ivanov refers here, of how matter sets traps, well, matter is just an expression of spirit anyway. And if we're aligned with spirit, as we've been speaking about at the beginning for the first very half of this show, of being connected to something higher and purer and more refined, what are we connected to? I believe that what we are really connected to is the intelligence of the universe itself. We use the word spirit, but what we're really talking about is the highest level, the most refined level of intelligence. It's an electromagnetic matter, it's bioelectrical, it's biochemical, and it's, how do I put it, chi-like. It's the level of life force itself. And it has a visible and a non-visible component. It has a seen, unseen. It is from the void and appears empty, but indeed, as Lao Tzu would say, is very full. So, what is the point? If we're in touch with that deep spiritual nature of ours, we become natural guardians of our own homes. We become responsible stewards of our earth, which is our home. There is no leap about it. There's no having to study the subject to know it. There's just the knowledge, the inner knowing, that one does not soil one's home. One does not soil one's own nest. One cares for it. One cleanses it. One keeps it well, organized, coherent, aesthetically pleasing. And so it is. That's a fractal relationship of each of our individual homes with the earth itself. So, what is this? If people are trying to destroy our earth through the use of nuclear arms, or through the use of toxic chemicals, or by genetically modifying our food sources, or by developing something called terminator seed, so that farmers must rely on some company to generate the next year's crops, we see that we have a lot of work to do. If we see that in the 21st century, after the full development of the cerebral cortex, people are still opting to use guns and tanks and bombs to settle questions, we see that our work is cut out for us. This is what Andrew Harvey and myself and many others refer to as sacred or spiritual activism. It's where we are informed by spirit of the way things should be and the way things can be. And we want to translate that into those beneficial actions that will allow our nests to proceed lovingly and harmoniously. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? It really does. I'll tell you why. It is simple. There's no rocket science about it. It's very, very, very simple. But there would be a lot of people who might not have the jobs that they have if we kept things truly simple, honest, honorable, virtuous, just by definition. We see, in fact, that so much of our economy is generated out of the lack of these virtues, not overtly as such, but covertly. And that's the rub. Because it's covert, it's not honest. And it appears that we need weapons of different forms of mass destruction to protect ourselves But that's not really the case. We need some armaments, yes. Primarily our brain, our mind, our heart, and our soul. And when laid bare, other human beings resonate with these, and peace is reestablished if it were lost. Oh, I know that sounds so bloody idealistic. Well, I believe we were designed this way biologically. And we can prove that these resonance fields exist. The work of Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenetic fields, for one. The wonderful aggregating work of Lynn McTaggart, who wrote The Field and the Intention Experiment. We have from Princeton University the Project on Global Consciousness, which shows coherent fields showing up on different parts of the planet when the planet actually is somewhat, or humans are somewhat traumatized. So we have evidence, indicators, indices of these kinds of phenomena. So we know that we are all so interconnected. And if we were to marshal our energy toward the accomplishment of a certain goal, it can and will be done. It may not happen in the time frame we so wish, but it will happen. It's a function of universal intelligence, and therefore a function of universal energy. So I will be going out to Ashland, Oregon, later this week to give a workshop on many of the things that I'm discussing today. The use of the oneness blessing to help awaken the brain and stimulate the prefrontal lobes. I will be inviting a gentleman that we had as a guest a couple of weeks ago, Ray Camano of the ICAP Release Meter, to join me for a part of the afternoon to talk about how we can actually measure the subconscious contents of our minds, which is a way of saying we can measure those blockages, those resistances that are still inside us, that are slowing our progress toward completion of a given goal or series of goals, material, spiritual, or otherwise. We actually have a quantitative analysis these days of how the brain works and metabolizes emotions and helps them move through or sees them getting stuck. It's essentially a mini EEG machine. And to be able to see our own subconscious in action, so to speak, and to be empowered to bring down the numbers so that those subconscious resistances, those unwanted feelings that populate our lives are able to be modified, softened, mollified, and let go of. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're doing. That way we have a straight, direct line to our source, to our own, let's call it, divine nature, to our highest selves, and we can manifest as masters from there. I mean, after all, that's the promise of being human, the divine human. The full tilt of human potential is in realizing our own nature. And to realize our own nature is to realize that we are the source of it all, as, shall we say, co-creators. And it's awesome, as both Nelson Mandela was heard to be quoting Marianne Williamson when he said, it's not fear, it's not failure we most fear. It's our success. Ultimately, it's our own divinity that keeps us down. We're not rising to the occasion. We've gotten accustomed to slavery. We have not risen up and liberated ourselves. So, liberation is possible. Cleansing the subconscious of its stories, of old hurts, of old feelings, of old emotions is possible. It is around the corner for us, and we'll be exploring that and working with that this coming weekend out in Ashland, Oregon. Certainly feel free to call me for information, and I'll guide you to the right people, Cindy and Callie, out on the West Coast. We'll have a ball. I'll be visiting my friend James Twyman, who is the peace troubadour who's gone to war-torn countries all over the world. And boy, oh boy, just a lot. And for those of you who are interested in this subject, even in the next couple of days, go to this website, www.dadabhagwan.org. I'll spell it for you. www.dadabhagwan.org. He's a spiritual teacher from India who is going to be down near, interestingly, Atlantic City Wednesday and Thursday, and you can learn a lot about this subject of liberation. Thank you for joining us this week. I'll be calling in from Ashland next week for our show. Please get in touch with us at www.abetterworld.net or 212-420-0800. We love hearing from you. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World, and I will see you all next week.